Channel 5 Network. This is Open Line.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Line. We have what I think is a very interesting show tonight. We're talking with a psychologist about challenges facing an entire generation and what I would say is our entire culture. We're talking about something called Millennial Burnout. It was described in a very popular article, and we'll get into that. Millennials, of course, were born between 1981 and 1996. There are all kinds of stereotypes. People attack millennials. That's not the purpose of what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to talk about where we are right now in our culture. So it's a big topic, and I'm happy to have with us psychologist Anna Settle. Thank you for being here.
Yes, of course.
All right, so you've read this called Millennial Burnout.
I have. It's a great article.
And all right, so what are some of the contributing factors? Contributing factors to this burnout, it's rooted in challenging job and economic conditions. The article also describes intensive parenting as a contributing factor because millennials have been relentlessly trained and prepared for the workplace by their parents. And they have internalized the idea they need to be working all the time or engaging in a never-ending pursuit of self-optimization. So I'm fascinated by all that. There's a lot there. But so what do you think? You saw this article talking about millennial burnout. What do you think?
Yeah, I really liked how he went into it talking about sort of the mundane tasks that are so difficult for him. I do think that this cohort, and not just this cohort, all of us, you know, we have everything at our fingertips and everything is so easily accessible. We're on social media all of the time. You know, when we're doing work, we're constantly connected through text and email. And so the idea of doing something like mailing a letter or taking your dog to the vet seems like you're not being productive. And I think people have a lot of guilt around that.
And so we put this out there on Twitter, and of course immediately people were saying what almost you would expect some would say. They would say millennials have it better than other generations. What about the generation that, you know, fought in World War II? And so is it more difficult for this generation, the challenges they face? What do you think?
I mean, I think every time period has its challenges. Life is difficult, right? So they have different challenges from previous generations, but there's a lot of pressure on them to perform and to produce. And the helicopter parenting that you mentioned, I mean, they're expected to constantly perform and meet some sort of standard that maybe their parents didn't quite meet because they want them to have a better life. That's a lot of pressure to carry out those plans.
Is that something, so you're a psychologist.
Yes.
Is that something that you're seeing? If either from kids coming in who have felt this pressure. The other thing this article gets into is, yeah, they've been told, okay, get A's in high school and then you get into a good college. Get A's in college and then you'll have a good job.
Right.
And there's just this constant, again, self-optimization. And this economy has not allowed that to really play itself out.
Right.
Many have now done that. They've gotten good grades in high school. They've gotten good grades in college. They've even gone and got debt so that they would get a master's degree.
Yes.
And now they're out in an economy that is not fulfilling what they've been told.
Right.
And that is leading to some of these issues.
Yes, and they're also being fed the message, well, maybe the traditional 9-to-5 job is not quite as glamorous. Maybe you should be an entrepreneur. You should start a business. You know, the world is at your fingertips. You're looking at people on social media sites that are blogging and doing all of these things that are not traditional jobs. So they are being set up to get traditional 9-to-5 jobs, but then also expected to do something a little bit more glamorous.
It says life has been flattened into, a series of to-do lists. And I think, again, that could be, we have flattened our lives into to-do lists. Mm-hmm. That's not just millennials, potentially.
Right.
But I think they're in that group. And so again, do you see that? And
yes.
What is that? What does that do?
Absolutely. I also think this generation, I mean, you were talking about getting good grades in high school, getting good grades in college, and that sort of segueing into a good job. This generation, there's so much pressure, even in the college years. It's, you know, they have to secure an internship their junior year of college so that they get an offer after they graduate their senior year, and they're expected to know the profession, the company, the city in which they are going to live. Whereas you go a generation or two back and you look at those cohorts, it was, you know, graduating from college was enough, but now that's not enough, and a good job is not enough. So there are extreme pressures on this generation, and I think we don't take that into account when we make some of the negative comments about them.
And so what do we learn from that? If this generation has had to deal with that, where are we headed with the kids right now? You know, parents out there or people who have grandkids, we've seen this generation. I feel like there's been all kinds of pressure heaped on that generation,
Yes.
all kind of expectation. I don't know that it's any better for our current generation.
Right.
You know, and so what are you seeing, and what do we need to learn?
So the first thing I'll say is no judgment. We're all figuring this out together. So when I give parents tips and I talk about these things, I'm not judging the decisions that they are making, but I do think we're going to have to unplug. I mean, our kids are so connected. Our kids, our adolescents, the millennials, we're connected in so many different ways, and there's no time. Even when in the article when he's talking about, I have this app where I'm supposed to meditate. I mean, even meditation or solitude has become part of a to-do list where you're supposed to check the box, and there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and you should check out this blog so make sure that you're doing it correctly. There's just too much access to information about how we are supposed to be living life when, you know, sometimes we just need to kind of go with the flow and unplug.
And it wasn't that long ago I was talking to a college president who said, you know, I've got a campus full of kids here who are privileged in many ways, and yet I'm dealing with high levels of depression, I'm dealing with concerns about suicide. I'm dealing with things that you wouldn't think a president would have to be dealing with on a campus like this. But I think, again, we're seeing that. He's not alone.
Right.
You know, so we have these kids that are coming out in these somewhat privileged sort of situations, you know, more educated than ever before. They've done sports, they've done all this stuff, they're connected. But is something wrong? Are we missing something? Are we doing something wrong, do you think, right now, for this generation, for kids that are coming out? When you see that level of depression and suicide and some of the things he's talking about, that you know, what about that?
Yeah, because everything has become performance-based. So in the article, he talks about, you know, there's no longer the game of kick the can down the street. Now it's organized sports, and fun play dates are now organized by helicopter parents, he was saying, or even, you know, kids now are going to preschool or even going to daycares that are so structured. There isn't as much emphasis on the Montessori type. It's more there's structure, and we're trying to get them to perform so that they're ready at a certain level or that they're above their peers. So I think that is a lot of pressure starting in early childhood that we're placing on kids, and then that just continues throughout.
So the article talks about that's what it did to millennials, and then I don't know that it's changed. If anything, I feel like it's intensified. Do you believe that?
For the younger generation,
Yeah.
like children now?
Because millennials are 1981 to 1996. I don't know
Right.
what you call what comes up after 1996.
Right.
But I mean, is it only intensified?
You know, I think there's more of an awareness around it. I'm not so sure we've started changing things yet. So you'll hear parents and psychologists talking about unplugging. You'll hear them talk about helicopter parenting. So I think we've identified the problems maybe that were happening with the millennial generation, but I'm not so sure we've rectified them quite yet. But I think we're moving in that direction.
This kind of conversation, perhaps. We have several calls. I'm just going to start taking calls now. Let's go to David here. Hello, David.
Good evening.
Go right ahead.
No problem. I hope you're staying warm. My question is, I'm in my mid-50s, so that we can kind of get a brief synopsis of who I am and how I grew up in the 60s. And basically, when I was growing up, you worked hard so that you could get to your 40s and 50s and then have advertisers cater to you and try to cater to your every little whim. What I'm noticing now is that the advertising world and marketers are catering to millennials who basically, really, as far as I know, and I'm an Uber driver on the side, they ain't got that much money. And so I don't get the trying to get the new people brand loyalty from millennials, because to me they're kind of fickle anyway, and they're just going to go to the newest app or newest trend and jump on board. And for me, growing up the way I did, if I don't have my smartphone, which I love with all my heart, but if I don't have it, I have resources by book smart and the way I was raised to know how to use my hands, I still have encyclopedias in my house and still have Wikipedia on the phone. So I feel like this millennial group, if they don't have their smartphones, they're completely lost. And that's something should be of some concern to those who are raising their children in this era. And I'll hang up and listen. We'll see what you think about it.
All right, thanks for the call in. So there's somebody in his 50s. He's seen this shift. And then he went into, if they don't have their phones, they're lost. And he said he loves his phone. I think we're all kind of in that boat.
Sure.
But I guess what kind of stands out to you from that call?
I think we like to say that it's millennials that are addicted to their phones, but we are all addicted to our phones. I think maybe even the younger generation, the generation below the millennials, they are increasingly addicted to their phones because of social media, and that they're getting phones now at younger ages. So yeah, I think maybe we place that on them, but I would say that you walk in any restaurant and everyone has a phone on the table at the very least.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's interesting what he said about advertisers. There's no doubt advertisers are focused on that. I believe it's 25 to 54. They are trying to build brand loyalty. There's no doubt about that. And I don't know if that's changed. You're saying it used to be maybe different is what he was saying. There's no doubt right now that's where the focus is that. And they're trying to build brand loyalty. But okay, thanks, David, for the call. Let's go to Justin. Hello, Justin.
Yes.
Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I think, I'm a millennial myself, and I think a big problem is the decades of Marxist indoctrination. You can look back at the 80s at what Yuri Bezmenov was saying, and everything is saying too.
Okay. All right. I don't know about that. Let's go to Jamal. Hello, Jamal.
Hello.
Hello. Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
Oh, I was wanting to comment on the millennials.
Sure.
Before making the word millennials sound like they're victims, let's go back to some of the local way we raise kids and have them play, because kids are not playing anymore. They don't go outside. There's no community base. With you shipping your kids off at 5 in the morning on bus rides to schools all over the city, when do the kids get time to come home and interact with the family, the neighborhoods? And you're building $100,000 neighborhoods with no place for kids to play. It's not the systematic of the children. It's more than a systematic of the parents and the city. If you want your kids to have an active local lifestyle, you have to invest in that by having skating rinks, basketball courts, baseball fields for kids to come home and play in. And so it's more of our fast-paced lifestyle where we're looking back after our kids are adults and saying, why didn't we invest in them? And we give them things like cell phones and Xboxes to play with, and that's a computer, that's not a person. And so they don't have good human interaction skills due to that when they get grown. And then that's when it seems that they have all of these problems mixing with other people.
All right.
And that's not a system of the millennial. That's a system of the family.
Right. All right, Jamal, thank you. You bring up a few things there. Regimented, kind of scheduled play. That's the first thing I take away from what he said. And we still see that, right? Now everything, it's sporting events, it's camps. It's not just go out and play in the neighborhood. I feel like if they did that now, people call DCS.
Right.
It's like so unusual that you would just have your kids go out and play in the neighborhood. It would be just like shocking. Yeah. And that's what used to happen. And I don't know is that better or is it worse?
Yeah, I think it's a confluence of factors. I always feel protective of parents when people start saying that it's the parents' fault. Because, if you look at generations in the past, children were working, and in the home, out in the fields, they were helping with chores, same with parents. Now we have so much time because all of that stuff is already taken care of. And so I see a lot of moms in my practice who feel guilty because they think they should be engaging with their children 100% of the time. They're getting messages from social media and from all different sorts of blogs that they're following that say you should be doing this activity with your children, or else they're not going to be able to socially integrate when they get older. And so I think parents feel like they need to be connected all of the time. Then there's anxiety that then in turn is put on the kids. And parents do need a break, so they might hand their kid an iPad. Is that the best choice? Probably not, but is that going to cause them to be asocial or unable to socialize with other people? No, it's all about balance, So I think we have to be careful about understanding that it is a systemic problem, and I think you mentioned that. So there are a lot of factors.
That's a good point. Come at it from the point of view of parents. I mean, they also are on social media, and they see picture after picture of the Joneses over here on some great vacation, and they're all, it looks like, playing kickball or whatever it is they're doing, and that may be just one little snapshot.
Right.
But it's this pressure that builds, and that anxiety is handed on to the kids. I mean, that's an interesting point. And so you're saying, think about this from the point of view of parents as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. All right, we're going to take a break. If you want to call in, there's a number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We're talking about millennial burnout, but it's really bigger than that. What are your thoughts? Give us a call. I'll be back right after this.